Have you ever woken up dreading the day ahead? Not because anything terrible is happening, but because you're just exhausted. Physically, emotionally, mentally. Like your life is a loop of doing everything for everyone else and losing yourself along the way. I've been there, and so my guest for today, Ronni Landeck. First of all, I want to welcome you to From a Woman to a Leader, a podcast for women like you, for women in tech. And my name is Limor Bergman Gross. And for those who don't know me, I've been in tech for over 20 years in a software development role and later on manager, engineering manager, and director of engineering. And for the past 5.5 years, I'm an executive coach helping women in tech. And on this podcast, I sit down with incredible women who have walked the messy, inspiring path for leadership and now use their voices to uplift others. And Ronni is a former corporate leader, and she's now coach for women, especially introverts in STEM careers. And in this episode, she shares how she went from burnout and survival mode to building a career that fuels her joy. And we talk about the subtle signs you're out of alignment, why thriving starts with self-awareness, and she shares her powerful source framework to help you reclaim your energy, purpose, and voice. And she drops some practical tools like how to regulate your stress response, rewrite the rules you live by, and find community that truly supports you. So, if you are ready to stop surviving and start thriving, stay with me and Ronni in this episode. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an inspiring conversation. Are you ready? Let's dive right in. Hi, Ronni, and welcome.
Hi, Limor. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure having you today. And how are you?
I'm doing very well. Very excited to see what we discover together today.
Me too. I'm very, very excited speaking with you today. So I think maybe we'll talk a little bit about your journey, like how kind of you reached from like your leadership career from corporate to coaching, kind of try to understand kind of your journey a little bit.
Sure. So I was always a person who loved developing people, no matter what role I found myself in over my 25 years of corporate life. I always loved investing in people, seeing what potential could be brought forth. And that's what really kept me going, no matter what industry I was in. And the other component was no matter what role or what job I was doing, I had this like desire to be stronger, better, more skillful, wiser, no matter where I was. You know, I started full time leading people even at like age 21. And I was like, okay, I definitely don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to figure this out. Right. So I think I just had this, some sort of you might call it a stubborn streak, or you might call it determination, depends on how you want to look at it. But I was determined to bring forth the best of myself and others. And that really informed much of my career. I ended up leading teams and growing in that way, but I always felt like perhaps my impact was a bit limited because it was just in the scope of the work we were doing. And I had this like drive all the time to be like, I know there's more. I know there's more. So when I even realized coaching was a career, a job, I was like, what? People get paid to do that? I love that. You know, so when I found that it was a job, I'm like, that is the one thing that I feel like is in my DNA, got my training, used my real life background, took the leap when my kids all left the nest. And so now it's 2 feet in, all the way in, coaching these last 2 years full time. Totally love it. And I do feel very fortunate that I found a thing that doesn't feel like work. Like it feels like me just expressing who I am, what I learn, and what I want to learn more about. And I get to do it and impact on a more diverse scale, a wide scale. Feels limitless in many ways to me. So that's why I'm here.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for sharing. I mean, I feel very much similarly to you. Like I feel so fortunate. Like I'm actually getting paid to doing that. Like it's like it's wonderful, and we want to help you, like the listeners, like to do the same. We want to help you thrive, right? We talked about
100%.
thriving. Before we get into thriving, I mean, what would you say like was for you when you realized like I don't know, something is not working out? Like, how did you realize that?
A huge gauge is how do you feel when you open your eyes in the morning, right? Are you filled with dread? um, are you filled with a sense of overwhelm, like as soon as you wake up? And so for me, that was a big indicator of, am I where I belong at this juncture, you know? And if not, if I felt that for any period of time, like my alarm would go off and I wouldn't want to hop out of bed, um, or would have to go through all these mental gymnastics to convince myself that this was okay and that I'm doing what I need to do. Like all those things
Yeah,
that we can, cope our way through many seasons. And sometimes you have to, right? For a period. But for me, I realized I realized to be more sensitive perhaps to that in myself and know something's got to change. Perhaps a small change, because a small change can definitely ripple out into other areas. Like maybe it's just like a conversation with my boss that I just really need to get real clear on and, be courageous about. Maybe it was something as small as that. Sometimes it was like, am I in the right organization? Am I in the right role? Am I really aligned with my life? Are my life and daily activities aligned with really what makes me feel alive? So for me, that dread in the morning is a big barometer, I would say, of
yeah,
am I doing am I living true to myself, right? And then for me, I start in reverse engineering. Okay, where do I want to be, and what are like the three huge steps that I would have to take to get there? And then if you on some level understand the three big steps it would take, now you can start to create momentum and get the training skill gap or learning that you need, or meet the people, start networking, um, explore basically, and then execute. So I feel like I've done that many times in my life. Probably I developed a process for finding what gives me joy and fulfillment.
absolutely. And I think that, yeah, very common indicators are like, as you said, like in the morning, like you have this feeling, oh my God, it's another day. Or towards the end of the weekend, you feel really depressed, right? That you have to start another work week.
Yeah.
Or you have to have a vacation planned out. And I'm saying that based on experience, by the
Yeah, I hear you.
way. So, like, oh, you have to have something to look up to, like the next vacation. Otherwise, you don't know how you'll survive. Like, you have to keep something like on the calendar. Oh, I have something to look up to, like the next
Yes,
vacation. Can
that's a
you
big.
relate?
Yeah. Yes, 100%. Yeah, if you're living for the vacation, if that's what's getting you by on your day to day, okay, maybe hit pause, take time and reflect, right? We're so rewarded for doing, moving, 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 but if we slow down and pause, I love journaling. I feel like so many people who really are um successful in their life have taken a lot of time to journal and reflect, and that's where you get clarity. Sometimes you might not even like what you come up with when you're journaling at first blush, right? You might be like, oh no, this is unsettling. But the more honest you are with yourself, the better chance you have of putting into the world what you're meant to put into the world, if I speak generally about it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think for us, especially women, and especially when we kind of start having a family and we raise kids, at least for me, it was like we work so hard and try to balance everything, right? Not just a job, but also like family, our parents, our children, our spouses, like everything is just too much.
Hmm. Hmm.
So let's dive perhaps into your framework of thriving, because you mentioned like you created kind of a system in
Yes.
place. And we want
Yeah.
to share that with our listeners.
I
And you
would love.
said it's called Source.
Hmm. Yeah, the acronym source, it hit me one day. I was driving, and it
Uh
was
huh.
when I had my career of my long commute. I was literally hour and a half into work each day, hour and a half home, still had children in school, and a career that was rewarding, but also took a lot, took a lot of energy, effort, mental focus, physical focus. So, um, doing all the plates in the air, keeping them up in the air. And the source framework hit me as to how, as a coach, I can give people an understanding of what we work through when we're together, working together. And coaching is a collaborative process, right? My client brings their experience, their wisdom, their gifts, and I bring an objective viewpoint, perhaps. Let's
Yeah.
let's take a nice look at this. Let's just explore and see what you come up with that are your answers, right? It's a fun way to look at it, staying expansive, staying open, right, to what can come. So the source framework and the work in this framework is not linear. We might work through different aspects of it. The S is self exploration, self discovery. Like, just know we do some assessments, we just knowing how are you emotionally, physically, energetically showing up in different
Mm-hmm.
scenarios of life, including family, including at work, for your health, for your finances, spiritual development, personal development. So it's a really, um, you know, moment in time we look at, like, how are you and how satisfied are you with that, right? So that's the S, is self exploration
So
and
is it
and being
like
open.
how satisfied are you with different aspects of your life, like with your work, with your how you are present for your children, for your husband or wife, for your family, for your friend? Like how what do you assess?
Yeah, great question. The main assessment, and I tailor it completely to the individual. There's not a one size fits all approach, because everyone brings their way of thinking and learning. So I
Yeah.
definitely pay attention. One of the first early questions I find out from my clients is, how do you learn best? And that informs the path we take in many cases. I will do, I have something called the Energy Leadership Index. It's a really cool, attitudinal type of assessment, and it's from IPEC, the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. Excellent tool, because it gives you a very clear picture of where are you where are you in stress moments versus your default, right? In our default state, we are creative, we are calm, we are compassionate, right? But then something happens, a stressor to all of us, right? It can be
Yeah.
throughout the day, it can be a major life thing. Where do you default to under those times of stress, right? We might
Yeah.
default to victim mode. We might go to anger and conflict, right? And some combination of these things. So really, it helps to put language around these things that are happening in the client's life as sort of as maybe their current pattern.
Yeah.
Then with that awareness, now you have the ability to create change. It's got to start with awareness. So that S is self exploration, self awareness. Um, then I move into openness. How open can you be to trying something new, right? Try on a new habit, perhaps mindfulness. And maybe we don't always call it mindfulness when we're working on it, but I talk about, yeah, let's slow down and find some ways to really regulate what's happening in your body when you're under stress. So the openness to build some new habits. It might even be openness to rethinking and reprioritizing some aspects of life. That's a huge part of it, right? Maybe the openness to recognizing old rules that you were living by, and the um, having the courage to rewrite some of those old rules that were based on assumptions, that were based on programming, not necessarily negative. It just maybe isn't serving you now at this point in life. Maybe something that worked great in your 20s, when you were in your 20s, maybe working 50 and 60 hours a week felt like a great, a freedom and reward for all the work that you put in school. But then if you're working 50 and 60 hours a week and you're in your 40s or 50s and you don't have time to eat well and you don't get enough sleep, okay, maybe that old rule of the more you work, the
Yeah.
more successful you're going to be is now damaging you, right? So we look at some of the behind the scenes operating principles that we're living by and say, okay, would you like to choose to look at another way to do it? And the answer, of course, is yes. If you're ready to sort of embrace this new part of life, so the openness to new habits, new ways of thinking, that's the O. You, as the you in source, is upward. Like, what is your purpose? What's the bigger picture? What's your drive, your passion, your meaning behind any of these things that we're investing in? Because our time, you put that time in, you can't get that back. So, is your career meaningful? Are your relationships healthy and bringing out the best in you and in others? So that spiritual component, that purpose, mission component is the upward, the you. Um, and obviously that is sprinkled through all phases of what we're doing in the work, through the S and the O and the beyond. SOUR is rest and revive. I highlight that because it's something like we already touched on. We're rewarded for this achievement and going, but there's also a tipping point where burnout is so common, or just not living well, not being well, even though all many other indicators might look on the surface like you're having this amazing life. But well-being is, to me, a foundational component of really living to your potential and giving what you have to give to the world, making that impact. So rest and revive. And that looks different for each person. And then the E, SOUR, why can't I smell? The C is community. Who are you surrounding you with? Is your network growing in a way that serves your goals, your purpose? And it could be a smaller sense of community, like, who's in your lifeboat with you, that old
Yeah.
analogy. So really realizing you don't have to go at this alone. And not only do you not have to, we're not intended to go through this journey alone. We can help others and also help ourselves in this community based and idea. And I even formed a community that is around helping others learn how to network in a way that feels natural. Because a lot of women I meet hear the word networking and they cringe. They're like, what is that? So I formed a community just where skills can be layered in, and it's lighthearted and it's uplifting. And I love, the fact that I can maybe facilitate some of that through people who aren't even necessarily clients of mine, just people who I encounter who want to be better. So C is community. And then the E is execute. We make plans. We hold each other accountable. They find accountability partners. And so the E is execute. So yes, you can have ideas, but let's implement and make the things work and fill in what we need to learn or what resources to go after so that we can execute the goals that my clients are coming with. And they might be a short-term goal. They might be a bigger picture, for the next chapter of their life goal. So we look at the micro, we look at the macro, depending on where my client meets me, where they are, where they start. So that's the framework. So it has structure, but it has much flexibility for the person and their time that we need.
Yeah. What happens when someone? I mean, a lot of time people don't really realize what is possible for them, right? I mean, someone may feel like, okay, I'm like in this hamster wheel. My life is like I'm so exhausted. Like work, kids. I'm doing so many things. I don't feel like I even enjoy what I'm doing anymore. And like, but they don't see a way out. They're in this
Mhm.
hamster wheel.
Yeah.
How can you start even? Because I think that requires some I don't know, some space to think about those things. And when you're so busy, it's really difficult to find it, as you said, like open mindedness to think about what you want, what is not working well, all of those things. So,
Very
what's your
good
advice
question.
for that?
Very good question. Sounds like you're describing, living in survival mode, right?
Like
You're
many
just,
of us do,
yeah,
many
yeah.
women do.
And I was there. I was there living in survival mode for many, many longer than I even like to say how long I was in survival mode. Um, so yeah, like you said, taking time to get some space to even examine what's happening in life. You know, where's my time going? Where's my money going? Where's my energy and effort going? Yeah, stopping to really assess would be key. Like, give yourself that space. Some examples of where I found space was um, on retreat. You know, maybe even a 1 day retreat. You know, for me, it was spiritually based.
Yeah.
Another, so that could work for some listeners. Another practice that kept me, I can think of two things right now that really kept me um, healthy and also future focused with a sense of optimism. Like, yes, this is what I'm struggling through right now, but this is not the end of my story. This is not it, right? There's more. Not in a frustrated way all the time, but in a more like a optimistic, like I can, a gritty way, like I can get through this and make this meaningful for myself and for others. I would get up before my children. So whatever age my kids were, if they were getting up at whatever, let's say 7 a.m., I disciplined myself over time to get up earlier to have quiet time alone. That was key for me through my parenting years. And my children are now 32 years old, all the way down to 20 years old. So I did the parenting thing for quite a while. Yeah. So quiet time alone for me was morning. So I would, read things that were meaningful to me, journal, meditate, exercise, I did what I was sometimes, it wasn't a routine that was ABCD, I'm done. It was maybe seasonal, depending on what I felt like I needed more of in that season during that alone time. So, um, you know, maybe an hour alone, maybe 30 minutes alone, whatever you can intentionally build in to your rhythms. That was very that kept me sane, I would say, during
Yeah.
those years. The other thing was a practice for me was yoga. Like, I can't say enough about how beneficial yoga is for body, mind, mental health, stress management, your journey through this life. Yoga was huge for me. And I didn't know at the time how much it was doing. I couldn't speak to the results at the time, but in hindsight, amazing, powerful practice. So yeah, I think practicing yoga for the last like 18 or 19 years um, was huge for me. The work I was doing, I was on my feet. It was physical, and it was you had to have a lot of emotional intelligence. You had to be agile. You had, to manage up, and you had a ton of horizontal what do you call it? Interaction, right? Like leading multiple teams with complex situations going on, and then the people directly answering to me and looking to me to be a role model, a leader, to be present, to be trustworthy, all those things. So I feel like my practices that I was led to do made me be able to show up in an effective way, and also be there for my family and myself after I realized I wasn't first being there for myself. Then I implemented those practices. Yeah.
Yeah. And well, I can say I'm not a morning person. I tried
Yes.
that. It did. That didn't work for me. There was a time when I remember my kids were very young and wanted to work out. So I said, okay, I'm at the gym 6 a.m. Three times a week. It lasted for about a month. So, so because I'm not a morning person. And then what we did when my kids were young, we bought a treadmill and a cross trainer, and we put it in the basement, and we just worked out at home. And I remember my toddlers, they were like crawling around us, and like, they were around or watching something. I guess, I know it's hard. So I'm trying to kind of say to our listeners, I know it's hard, especially when you have young kids. It's really
Yes.
difficult and you work, and sometimes you have to commute. I commuted like most of my career to work, and you have young kids at home, and it's exhausting and it's super, super difficult. I know that. But I think
Yeah.
what you mentioned about alone time, or doing something just for you, just for yourself, is so important. Otherwise, it's hard to even try to think what what you
Mhm.
want. It's like you can't do that. You can't do this
That's
when
right.
you're busy all the time. So find a way that works for you. Find something that works for you. For me,
That's right.
again, when those tough years, I wanted to kind of move my body because I like sitting in front of a computer all day.
Hmm.
So I just had a home gym. For you, it may be, I don't know, going for a walk when the
Yes.
kids are asleep. Something that will energize you and help you relax and distress and be able to, I don't know, be able to dream. I think a
Love
lot of that
that.
is about dreaming that there's something else for you out there that is attainable.
That's an amazing point. I remember talking to a friend and I said, what do you dream of doing when you're through this phase or even in this phase? And she said, Ronnie, I think I've forgotten how to dream, how to
Yeah.
have that vision. And I was like, oh, that's sad, but I'm glad we noticed this. Like, all right, how do you get that spark back? It's almost like revisiting something that you had as a child, right? A skill set that you had as a child. We could use our imaginations. We could play, we could discover. So a lot of the coaching that I do, and I create some lessons that my clients can use asynchronously, so they can, okay, here's my 20 minutes, let me hop on my computer and focus on myself for a minute, get them thinking, get those I call them discovery time, right? Discovery session, because for me, discovery is linked to curiosity, play, um, and um, that's how you can learn to find ways to transcend where you are, transcend survival mode. And it's not easy. I'm not saying like this is an overnight fix that I'm offering anyone. And I think we're designed for things to take time, right? Because every experience, how no matter how challenging or, like you said, exhausting, um, how hard these moments and seasons are, they have value if you choose to look at them that way, right? They have value. What am I learning about myself? What am I growing in? How much stronger am I recognizing myself to be, or how much more compassionate am I learning to be towards myself and towards others? Like, there's value in the good and the bad. We judge them as good or bad. There's value in every experience. So I do hope to have people see that, as they're working with me, or even as they're just listening to this.
Yeah. So do you have anything that they can actually take away from today? Like, I don't know if you have any practical advice or anything that the women that are listening to us today can actually take from this conversation.
Yeah, there's so much. Let me think. One question that we can ask of ourselves when you have those moments when, and we all do it to ourselves at different times, when you're hard on yourself, when you're having that voice of criticism, um, that maybe it's so pervasive that we even forget it's a voice that can be there and not be there, right? That critical, the inner voice, the inner critic. When you notice it, pause and ask yourself, you know, if I were talking to my best friend about this thing, maybe this failure that I'm experiencing right now, or this sense of disappointment in myself right now, or even just a feeling of like, wow, I am really not um, measuring up in some way. When we get that sense in ourselves, or these messages that we might be hearing when you're that self-talk, pause and say, if I were talking to my best friend right now and they told me that this thing happened or they did this thing, what would I say to them right now? What would I say to my best friend? and then offer that to yourself. That if you can instill that into your day-to-day practice, being kinder to yourself, compassion, letting yourself off the hook. Like I sometimes might ask, I might ask, anyone listening, like, what would this look like if you let yourself off the hook right now for this thing that you're just feeling like you're failing at? Like, what if you gave yourself grace right now about it? Ah, they stop, their expression changes, their um, body language shifts, right? There's like almost like a weight comes off because then they realize there is a different way to treat ourselves. And then if we start there, that's when it can flow towards others, that same grace and space. Now you're in a space of solution, a space of, like you said, possibility, healing. Sometimes it's a space of healing. That's a piece of the journey for, I would say, all of us, especially women, and mothers. And, I think you create space for healing and growth. Yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's a helpful
Definitely.
tip.
So Lydia, before we end our so Ronni, I really want to thank you for all the tips today, and tell us kind of what your focus is like, and how can women find you?
Sure. I love working with women who are, mid-career. Perhaps they want to get that next level, or perhaps they just want to thrive exactly where they are, or look to new possibilities. So it's about finding joy and purpose at that season of life. To me, that is just what drives me to keep growing and learning and reaching more people, and creating materials that will serve my future clients. Like that just, is me poured out into my work. You can find me on LinkedIn. I am very active there so that I can keep the message out there. Also, I have a website. It's my name, RonniLandeck.com. You can connect with me there. Literally, you can connect with me to schedule time or send me an email. I love meeting new people. I also on LinkedIn, you can message me. So I love meeting new people and seeing where things can develop. I turned 50 like about a month ago, and I'm like, wow, I think it's significant, right? Like 50 somehow feels like
Congratulations, first of all.
Thank you. It just feels like this year of like, okay, this mark that who knows what lies ahead. I've been given the gift of 50 decades. If I were to be given the gift of 50 more decades, what am I going to do with that? Like, I feel like a sense of excitement and responsibility and curiosity. So anyone who wants to be a part of it, alongside with me, I'm just very open to the synergy that could come. I just put that out there. Yeah.
That's
and I
wonderful,
thank you.
Ronni.
Thank you for your great questions, Limor.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ronni. I think it was very valuable, and I guess I would like to say to everyone, like, invest in you, find a space, right? Because we need space to ourselves in order to think positively and see possibilities and be hopeful.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the episode with Ronni. And before you leave, first of all, if you like the episode, please subscribe to the podcast so you never miss another episode, and share it with any woman that this episode or other episodes in the podcast can help. I wanted to share with you that I started a Substack newsletter. So now you can find me also on Substack. It's limorbergman.substack.com. And I typically write a long post every week that is themed around what we talked here in the podcast. So if you want to get to know me a little bit better and read some personal stories, tune into my Substack newsletter. And before you go, I just wanted to give you a sneak peek about what I'm talking about next week. And this is especially for the mid-career women, the moms. You work in tech and you struggle with juggling your work, your school drop-offs, and you have that nagging mom guilt. Do you have it? I mean, I know I do, still do. I think you want to hear this episode. And in next week episode, I'm sitting with Arlene Cohen Miller, and she is a work-life harmony and leadership coach. And she's a former attorney that turned into a mentor and meditation facilitator. And we talk about why balance set us up to fail, and how to design harmony so you can actually live with. We go into micro rituals that you can do while you're commuting or in the checkout line, breathing techniques to reset 60 seconds, and how to turn your brutal inner critic into a coach you'd actually hire. So if you're thinking to yourself, I'm giving to everyone but me, this episode is for you. And follow the show. Drop me a review. DM me if you want to share with me your struggles or your thoughts. I'll be happy to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening, and see you next week. Bye.